Before we talk about the Typhoon of Steel, we must understand why it happened here. Okinawa was once an independent kingdom, Ryukyu or Ryukyu in our language, but for centuries it was a nation living under the shadow of larger empires. First, it was invaded by the samurai of Satsuma in 1609. It was colonized by Imperial Japan in 1879. Its king deposed, its culture suppressed. And in 1945, this history of domination reached its terrifying conclusion. The island was not just a battlefield, it was designed as a suteishi, a sacrificial stone to save the mainland. The weaponless kingdom became the most weaponized place on earth. The tragedy of Okinawa is not just a number of dead. It is the destruction of a unique, peaceful civilization by the violent logic of empire. This is the story of how Ryukyu became a suteishi, a sacrificial stone. By 1945, the Japanese empire was collapsing. The imperial headquarters in Tokyo made a cold, calculated decision. Okinawa would not be saved, it would be used. The goal was not victory, the goal was to bleed the Americans on Okinawa for as long as possible, to buy time for the mainland defense. General Ushijima's 32nd Army was the pawn. The 450,000 civilians were the shield. Okinawa was designed as a suteishi in a game of Go, a stone thrown away to save the king. And so Operation Iceberg began. The sacrifice unfolded in 4 phases. Phase 1. The deception. The landing on April 1st was eerily quiet. The US troops expected a bloodbath on the beaches. Instead, they walked ashore. Love Day, they called it. But it was a trap. The Japanese had abandoned the coast to lure them into the kill zones inland. Phase 2. The northern sweep. The North fell quickly, but it claimed a significant soul. Ernie Pyle, the journalist who spoke for the common soldier, was killed on Iejima. Phase 3. The Shuri Grind. Then the meat grinder, the Shuri Line. Here the Japanese suteishi strategy worked too well. Using underground tunnels and reverse slope defenses, they made the Americans pay for every yard with blood. It was World War I trench warfare, amplified by modern explosives. Phase 4. The collapse. Finally, the retreat to the south. This was the ultimate betrayal of the suteishi strategy. Instead of surrendering when defeated, the army retreated into the civilian refugee areas. The battlefield and the refugee camp became one. But this was not just a chaotic retreat. It was the beginning of a specific set of conditions that made Okinawa unique in the history of modern war. To understand the true depth of this tragedy, we must look at 10 specific realities that define this battle. Reality 1. The Typhoon of Steel. The Okinawans named it Tetsu no Bofu, the Typhoon of Steel. The US fleet fired over 600,000 naval shells. The bombardment was so intense it literally changed the geography. Hills were leveled, forests vanished. The shape of the land was rewritten by high explosives. For a people who worshipped nature, seeing their land physically erased was a spiritual death. Reality 2. The Kikusui. At sea, the suteishi logic applied to the pilots too. The Kikusui attacks, 1,900 suicide sorties. Men turned into guided missiles. For the US Navy sailors, it was a mental torture unlike any other. 36 ships sunk, 368 damaged, the largest naval losses in US history. Reality 3. The suicide of a giant Yamato. On April 7th, the symbol of the empire, the battleship Yamato, was sent on a one-way suicide mission to Okinawa. It was swarmed by 386 American planes and torn apart. The sinking symbolized the end of the Imperial Navy, but also the desperation of a nation that had begun to consume itself. Reality 4. Sugarloaf. On land, the horror condensed into a small hill. Sugarloaf. 11 times the Marines attacked. 11 times they were thrown back. Companies were wiped out in hours. It was a kill zone designed to break the human spirit. Survivors described it not as a battle, but as a slaughterhouse. Reality 5. The mud and decay. Then came the rain. The battlefield dissolved into a slurry of mud, oil and rotting bodies. The suteishi strategies meant no truce to bury the dead. Soldiers lived and fought in an open grave. Reality 6. The mobilization of children. The most heartbreaking aspect of the total war was the mobilization of children. Teenage boys were handed stick bombs and told to blow up tanks. Teenage girls, the Himeri students, were dragged into caves to act as nurses. 15-year-olds performing amputations without anesthesia in the dark. Flowers of the nation crushed under the boots of soldiers. Reality 7. Blowtorch and corkscrew. To dig the Japanese out of their caves, the US developed blowtorch and corkscrew. Liquid napalm was poured into cave entrances and ignited. The flames sucked the oxygen out of the air, suffocating those it didn't burn. Then explosives sealed the entrance. It was a war of mass killing. And inside those caves were not just soldiers, but families hiding with them. Reality 8. The nightmare of Shudanjiketsu. Shudanjiketsu, mass suicide, the ultimate tragedy of propaganda, taught that Americans were devils who would rape and torture. Families killed each other. Mothers smothered their own infants. Fathers detonated grenades in the family circle. It was the final, brutal success of the military's teaching, the destruction of the human instinct to survive. Reality 9. The spy allegations. As the end neared, the Seishi turned on itself. Japanese soldiers, desperate and starving, began to view the Okinawans as potential spies. Speaking the Ryukyu languages became a death sentence. Babies who cried in caves were silenced permanently. The protectors became the executioners. This betrayal, being killed by the very army that claimed to defend them, is the deepest scar of Okinawa. Reality 10. The commander's exit. Both commanders died, Buckner by artillery, Ushijima by suicide. But Ushijima's final order was not surrender. It was fight to the last. That order condemned thousands of stragglers and civilians to death even after the battle was officially lost. A final cut, a final act of irresponsibility from the leaders who chose the Ishi over survival. The battle ended on June 23rd. 200,000 lives were extinguished. 1 in 4 Okinawans died. Today, the cornerstone of peace in Itoma lists them all. Friend and foe, soldier and civilian, all mixed together. A silent rejection of the logic of war that continued Suteishi. But for Okinawa, the war didn't really end. After the battle, the island remained under US military administration for 27 years. Even today, 70% of US military facilities in Japan are concentrated on this small island, which makes up only 0.6% of Japan's land. The logic of Seishi remains. Once, they were the breakwater against an American invasion. Now, they are the keystone of the Pacific against new threats in Asia. The weaponless kingdom, the island of peace, is still burdened with the heaviest weapons of the world. This is the Okinawa paradox. And as we look at the blue sea today, we must remember beneath the coral, the steel still remains.